Something that we often lose in our Christian exegesis and interpretation of the words of Jesus and the words of the Bible is that the Apostolic Scriptures are meant to perfectly agree with the law of Moses. We don't have to have a contradiction between what Moses laid down and what Yeshua laid down. Indeed, if you properly understand Paul's writings, you'll find that he was a lifelong Torah keeper and that he frequently did things that were not only in agreement with Torah, but in they were a demonstration of his loyalty to Torah, like Acts chapter 21, where he's keeping these feasts and this vow and things like that. And so it's not necessary to tell Jews who are already loyal to Torah before they come to Jesus, once they become a Christian, you have to leave all that stuff behind, right? Sabbath's got to go. Sunday keeping is what you're going to do now, right? Keeping kosher, forget about that. Why try to do all that, right? Just have a ham sandwich. Keeping the festivals, now we've got some new ones for you, right? Christmas, Easter, things like that, and Lent if you're a Catholic. Why do we have to give him all that extra, and I'm using air quotes here, Gentile Christian baggage, right? The foreign aspect to him. Why can't he continue to be a zealous Jew, zealous for the law, and yet a believer in Jesus? He can. I go on to say, Judaism does not need to die. And unfortunately, the Gentile Christian church, the element of the church that is described as Gentile Christianity, which kind of blossomed after the first disciples kind of died out and the early Christians finally passed on, that version of the church or the body of Messiah, they felt it was necessary to recreate peoplehood and people identity, and so Gentile Christianity really sought to be identified over and against the Jewish identity. So there was a kind of an othering, what we call in psychology or sociology and things like that. The idea of us versus them going on. We are not Jews. Don't persecute us as Jews. Don't mistake us as Jews. All of these things. And so in their efforts to establish their position as a religion and a people of God, Judaism had to die. It had to be suppressed. It had to be kind of weeded out. It had to be hunted down and executed almost, as it were. So there was a kind of an effort, a concerted effort, a detailed effort to go throughout the vestiges of the Christian empire as it was flourishing there, in the Middle East, as also in the West, in Rome, and all throughout Asia, and things like that, and to kind of stop Christians from doing, I'm using air quotes again, Jewish things like Sabbath keeping and kosher keeping and keeping the festivals on the dates that they show up in the Bible. Because if you do these things, the leaders of that day told their followers who were Gentiles, if you do those Jewish things, you're going to look Jewish. And people are going to mistake who you are. They're going to think you're Jewish when instead you're not. And we all know that religion failed. We know those people group failed God. We know that law is a burden. It's bondage. It can't be followed. It's legalistic, etc., etc. So you guys know all the stereotypes. So let me keep reading my commentary. So Judaism doesn't have to die, in my opinion. However, I go on to say it most certainly needs to be reformed. And that's where the parable of Yeshua's comes in, right? If you actually go back and look at the parable one more time, let me pull it up again for you. If you look carefully, for instance, starting in verse 16, with the piece of unshrunk cloth in the old garment, if you read that story and corroborate it with the details that show up also in Mark and Luke, missing from John, but it's found in the other two, you can see actually that the purpose of the person patching the garment, think about it, you ready for it? I'm going to drop the bomb on you. The purpose of patching the garment is so that you can keep the garment. Let me pause and let that sink in. You buy a piece of unshrunk cloth, right, from the store, wherever you get it back in the day, and Yeshua is not saying you have to throw out the old garment, go and buy a new garment. Well, that defeats the purpose of buying a patch. If you think about this logically, verse 16, you buy a new patch that's unshrunk, and the only thing you need to do is simply shrink the patch first. What does that mean? means to somehow allow the patch and the garment to become adaptive to one another, to become compatible with one another, so that your purchase of the new garment, of the new patch, is not in vain, and you don't have to throw away that garment which has served you faithfully for all those years. That's the purpose of patching it anyway. Understand? So if the garment is Judaism and the patch is Yeshua's teaching, then Yeshua's not out to toss the garment. He's out to retain the garment. He simply wants to repair it and retain it and reform it with the patch. So then in the end, he ends up with, it is a patched garment, yeah, but it's a garment you can still wear and utilize.